I'm Alan Gratz, and you're watching Raider Media News.
Hello, I'm Kennedy.
Hey Kennedy, I'm Alan Gratz.
I'd like to thank you for taking time out of your day to visit with us.
Of course, my pleasure.
Can you tell us a little bit about your journey so far and what inspired you to become an author?
Sure. So I've known that I wanted to be a writer since I was a kid, and I think one of my earliest inspirations was not a book, but funny enough, a movie. So when I was 5 years old, there was a movie that came out in movie theaters that I loved, and it made me want to tell stories. You've probably never heard of this movie. It came out a long time before you were born, in 1977. It was called Star Wars. Oh wait, you've heard of it. Oh, of course you've heard of it. Yes, and I'm joking. I know that you've heard of it. I'm not joking though about how inspirational it was. Star Wars came out when I was a kid. It was a huge deal to me. I would go and see it in the movie theater over and over and over again. There was no Empire. There was no Return of the Jedi. There was none of all the other stuff, the Mandalorian, all that stuff. It was just that one movie. And I would come back home and I would go out in the backyard and I would pretend to be Han Solo or Luke Skywalker and have adventures. But I wasn't reliving the movie. I was making up my own stories about those characters. And really what I was doing was creating fan fiction. There wasn't a word for it back then, or if there was, I didn't know it. But I was making up stories about those characters and about that world. And that led to me creating my own worlds and my own characters eventually. But it was really Star Wars that first fired my imagination, and still love it today.
That's pretty awesome. How do you decide which historical events you want to cover?
So some of it is anniversaries, like I did Ground Zero for the 20-year anniversary of 9/11. I did Allies, which is a story of D-Day, for the 75th anniversary of D-Day. Sometimes it's a person I meet, like meeting Jack Gruner and writing Prisoner B3087 about his ordeal in the Holocaust, or meeting a person that who was a kid on the island of Okinawa during the Battle of Okinawa and writing Grenade based on his experiences. Sometimes it is just something that I read in a book about World War II or hear about that takes me on a different path. Sometimes I had a plumber who was working in my house the other day and he asked me what I did, and I told him that I wrote books about World War II a lot, and he's like, "Oh, have you heard of this bear that served in World War II?" And I'm like, "What? No." And he told me this story, and I went and looked it up, and there was a bear that some Polish army unit had adopted and took into war with them, and the bear fought in Italy. It never got hurt, like it was with them all through the battles, and I wrote a book about it, and that book hasn't come out yet, but I just turned it in. So like, I get ideas from the weirdest of places, from people I meet, sometimes who've been through something, from books I'm reading, from podcasts I'm listening to, from magazines, and then sometimes randomly from people who enjoy learning about history the same way I do.
Huh. That's actually really cool.
Yeah, it's totally fun. And once you're a writer and your idea radar is on, you find ideas all over the place. It's pretty awesome.
Many of your books are loved by young adults and middle school readers. How do you keep the balance between using, let's say, appropriate words for these historical events, but also considering your audience?
Right. No, it's a good question. And when you're writing about history, I'm often writing about situations that involve adults. And when adults are in war, they may curse a lot because it's a pretty bad situation, and that's what adults do when bad things happen. And so, or there might be some really difficult things to show on the page that happened that are very violent or really traumatic. And so I try to be as honest as possible as I can in the books, but also find ways to not put bad language in the book so that they can be shared with younger readers. And also, I will tell you the bad things that happened, but maybe not feel like I have to show it. So I can tell you that a person is shot and dies, but I don't have to tell that scene in gory detail.
Right.
So that's really the only thing I do differently between writing for kids and for adults. If I was writing the book for adults, I might be a little bit more graphic in my description of something. I might use adult language in a book like that. But when writing for kids, I just take those things out, but leave everything else realistic and the way that it would be. And I think it really reads the exact same, just for a different audience. So I am very conscious, though, that I could have somebody who is 8 years old picking up one of my books and reading, so I have a responsibility to tell the truth about a situation, but also not be so graphic and so frightening that I give somebody nightmares.
Right.
Yeah.
I was actually like 9 or 10 when I read this book,
Okay.
and it was actually one of my favorite books.
Right.
that I've read.
And so and that's the other thing, is that some readers are really mature at a young age and can handle that, and other kids are not capable of handling that even at an older age. So it's not always just the age, it's the emotional maturity of a person and what they're used to and what they can handle. And there's no right or wrong about that. Everybody's different. So I just try to write books that can appeal to the broadest audience that I can. And there may still be kids who are too young to read it or not ready to read my books, even if they're older, and I just have to accept that. And that's what's great about allowing kids and adults the freedom to read whatever it is they want to read, is if we say, oh, that book is too hard for an 8-year-old, so nobody should read it, then we're like, well, why don't we just make sure that no 8-year-olds read it? You know what I'm saying? Like, so instead of saying like, oh, that's got some difficult stuff in it, no one should read it, maybe we should say, how about we just say to the people who aren't good with the difficult stuff, just wait on this one, read it later, right? And I think that's what we need to be doing, rather than saying to everybody all the time, this book is good, this book is bad, you can't read this one, you can read this one.
Yeah. Writing can sometimes be a challenge. How do you overcome these challenges?
Oh, there's a lot of challenges. First, there's that little voice in your head that says you can't do it. There's that little voice in your head that says nobody's going to want to read this, or you've got a bad idea, or your characters are lame, and you're not going to, nobody's going to like this character, or nobody's going to like this story. There's always those little thoughts in your head that try to get you to not write something. First of all, you have to overcome those and say, no, I have a good reason for writing this. I have good characters. I have a good story. I'm going to put it out there into the world. And so number one is getting over that sort of internal editor that almost all of us have. But then even once you write a book, then you have other people who are going to read it, your editor, your agent, and then if it gets past them and they like it, then out to the world and the readership out there. And every time a new book comes out, I'm like, thinking to myself, oh, are people going to like this? Am I going to get bad reviews? Is it going to get good reviews? Is it going to be a hit? Is it going to be a bomb? And so, like, there's challenges like that, a lot of mental challenges. There's a lot of other challenges in writing a book, too, that are not emotional challenges, but like organizational ones.
Right.
How much research do I do? When do I stop doing research? How long should the book be? How many characters should I have? Who should those characters be? There's a lot of technical questions in writing a book. And so, like, there's all kinds of things. There's the confidence issues in being creative, but then there's also the technical issues in trying to figure out how to accomplish what you're setting out to do. Thankfully, there's a lot of people to help. There are books about writing. There's people who will teach you writing. There's other writers that you can talk to. So you're never alone in any of this, whether it is the emotional stuff and looking for the confidence, look for friends and family to say, you got this, you can do it. And if you're looking for advice on how to write a book, the technical stuff, there's also a lot of people out there, professional writers and teachers, who are standing ready to help you.
What advice do you have for aspiring young readers?
So for readers or writers?
Let's say both.
Yeah, right. So if you're a reader, read what's fun. Read what you love. Like, I think one of the things that happens when you get to high school is a lot of people stop reading for fun, because they go into class and they have a heavy reading load and they're told to analyze this and study this and research that and write a paper about this, and it kind of sucks the fun out of writing for a lot, out of reading. Now I did it. It sucks the fun out of reading for a lot of people. And I think the important thing is to find something that you love to read and keep reading, even on your own. Graphic novels, audiobooks, rereading books that you loved when you were younger, or finding new books, or nonfiction. A lot of people find nonfiction when find out they love nonfiction and they didn't read it much. Whatever it is, read for fun. Always make time for reading for pleasure in your own life, even outside of the classroom, which is tough because all through school, especially in high school and college, young people get a lot of books thrown at them, a lot of reading to do, and it's hard to find that time. But it's imperative to keep reading for fun. As a writer, I would say there are 3 big things I tell people. You have to read a lot, because you need to read other people's books to see how they create characters and how they create their plots and how they create setting. So you read and you absorb. Number 2 is write a lot. And it seems like stupid advice because you're like, well, I just told you I want to be a writer. But a lot of people don't make the time to write.
Right.
There's a whole bunch of other things I love to do. Read, go for walks, play board games, play video games, watch movies, watch TV shows, and I have to chisel out time for writing in that. Especially before I was a full-time writer, I had to find time and I was working a full-time job. You have to find time to write. Now, my full-time job is writing, and so I don't have to chisel that time out. It's there. But for most people who are getting started, you have to find time to write. And then, so read a lot, write a lot, and then keep an idea book. This is something I've been doing since I was in college. It was advice I got at the University of Tennessee from a writing teacher. And he said, today, right now, go out and buy a notebook that you love to write in. And this isn't going to be the book where you write your stories. This is going to be where you write down all your ideas for stories that you haven't had time to write yet. It's going to be where you write down all the advice you get from writing teachers or reading books about writing. It's where you're going to write down lines from poems and books that you love, not so that you can copy them, but so that you can be inspired by them. So I have been doing that since I was in college, and I always tell young people, start doing it now. If you did it now, you'd have me beat because you'd have 3, 4, 5 years on me before I started doing it. So those are treasures, all those idea books, and I still do that today. So read a lot, write a lot, keep an idea book.
I'm sure that helps with perspective.
It does, because I can look back at where I was and see that I've become a better writer too. And I tell people, never throw anything away. Whenever you write something, even if you don't like it, even if you don't finish it, save it, because eventually you might go back and you might take something from that and reuse an idea, but also you can look back at where you came from and see the development that you've made.
Yeah.
I wanted to use like sketchbooks.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm like gonna move houses, and I recently went through my old sketchbooks. I was like, I thought this was good at the time.
Right.
I remember. No.
Yeah.
Don't throw away old sketchbooks. Keep sketchbooks as well if you're an artist, that kind of thing. If you're a musician, keep the recordings of the stuff that you did when you weren't really good at it. It's okay. Nobody's gonna like make you publish that stuff, but it shows you the progress that you've made and reminds you of the work that you've put in to get where you are.
Your novels often feature diverse characters. How do you approach crafting authentic characters?
Right. So whenever I'm writing about somebody who is not me, somebody who is not who doesn't look like me, who has grown up differently or not from my country or from the culture that I live in, I have to be really respectful. I want to write books that are inclusive and diverse. I want to write books that do not have all characters who look like me when I look in the mirror. So to do that, I have to do a lot of research. I have to do my homework. I have to meet people, talk to people, learn about what other cultures are like and how other people live their lives. And then once I create those characters and put them in books, then before the book even comes out, I often share the book with people from those communities if I can, if it's not set way in the past. But I try to share my books with people from those communities who can then say, oh, you got this right, or you got that right, or this wrong, and try to make changes. But look, no one person ever represents an entire community or entire culture. So even those readers are not on the hook for like anything I get wrong. If I get something wrong, it's totally on me. I just get as much help as I can and try to learn as much as I can about other people. And the thing is to always remember to be respectful of other people. That's the trick, is if I'm being respectful and treating them like real human beings, then most of the time I think that's where we get really good diverse characters in books that are not written by people from that community. We obviously need books written by people from many different communities, and I hope there's room on the shelf for all of that. But the last thing I would want to do is write books that have all white characters, right? Or all cisgender characters, or all male characters for that matter. Like I want to write characters who are not me, who have different religions and different backgrounds and different upbringings.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of me trying to do as much homework as I can,
right,
and then be respectful about those people when I write about them.
As a successful author, what do you think the most important qualities a good writer?
So as a writer, I would say that the most important qualities that a person needs to have is persistence. Mm-hmm. This is going to get you far in life in general, but people are going to tell you no all the time. People are going to say, I don't like it, or do something different, or just tell you, no, I don't want to publish your book. If I had stopped writing the very first time somebody told me no, I wouldn't be sitting here with you today. If I wrote 2 whole books, sent them out, got nothing but rejection letters on them, and each of them went out to like 40 different publishers. Neither of those books has ever been published. The third book that I wrote and sent out, Samurai Shortstop, became my first published book, but it wasn't picked up until the 16th person that I sent it to. It got 15 rejections before somebody said yes to it. So, like, if I had quit on the first book, I wouldn't be sitting here. If I'd quit on the second book, if I'd quit on rejections 1 through 15 on my third book, I wouldn't be sitting here. But I believed in myself, and I believed in the stories that I was telling, and wanted it badly enough to keep doing it. So persistence is the thing that will get you success in anything, I think. And look, it took me that long, really, to get good enough to be a published author. My first books, I look back at them now, and they weren't good enough. But I was getting better each time. So I think the biggest thing for a writer is persistence. I think the biggest thing for a reader is making time to read, making reading a habit, making it a part of your life. If you make reading a habit, then you will have years of happiness ahead of you.
Are there any upcoming projects or events that you would like to tell us about?
Sure. So I just had a new book come out, Heroes, about the attack on Pearl Harbor. So that came out in February. We're doing this interview in March of 2024. So I won't have a new book for a little while, but in 2025, I've got a book I'm working on about the Berlin Olympics in 1936. So this was famously the Nazi Olympics. The Nazis already ruled Germany. It was pre-World War II. This is where Jesse Owens broke all those records. It's where the Boys in the Boat story happened, for people who are familiar with that book and that movie. There was all kinds of other stuff going on, and I'm going to tell a heist story set at the Berlin Olympics with some people trying to rob the Reichsbank while they're in town to win gold in the Olympics. I also have a graphic novel version of Refugee coming out. So that one I've written, and a really talented illustrator named Sid Finney is doing the art for that. And that book, I think, will come out next year, 2025. That's my guess. It always takes longer on the art, and I'm not in control of that, so I don't know. And then I just turned in a graphic novel about the soldier bear that I learned about from my plumber, and that one we haven't even started on the art. So that one will probably come out in 2026. Nothing happens fast in publishing, unfortunately. It usually takes about 1.5 to 2 years for a book to be finished, from when I start to when I finish it. Yeah. So if I want a book to come out next year, which I do, I have to already be working on it, and I am. I'm Alan Gratz, and you're watching Raider Media News.